the Founding Fathers created the United States, one of their biggest questions wasn't who should lead. It was how much power the new federal government should have. Should power rest mostly with the national government in the capital? Or should it stay primarily with the individual states that had just fought for their own independence? By the way, where should the capital even be? These questions gave rise to one of the earliest and longest-lasting debates in American political history, the debate between Federalists and Anti-Federalists. I'm Freya, and this is U.S. Government Explained. In today's episode, we'll explore the history of federalism, how the founders balanced national and state power, what federalism looks like in practice, and how this debate still shapes American politics today. Let's start with the basics. Federalism is a system of government in which power is divided between a central authority, in this case the federal government, and regional governments. In the case of the United States, this means the states. It's a system that tries to strike a balance, allowing the national government to handle issues that affect the entire country, while giving states the ability to make their own decisions on local matters. The idea was unconventional at the time. Most nations had one strong central government. But the U.S. founders wanted to avoid the kind of centralized control they had experienced under British rule. After the American Revolution, the United States first tried to govern itself under a document called the Articles of Confederation. It created a very weak national government, no president, no national courts, and very limited power to tax or regulate trade. The states were basically independent countries that occasionally cooperated. It didn't work very well. The national government couldn't raise money, settle disputes, or enforce laws. By the late 1780s, it was clear that something had to change. So, delegates met in Philadelphia in 1787 to write a new constitution. That's when the great debate began between the Federalists, who supported a stronger national government, and the Anti-Federalists, who feared it would become too powerful. The Federalists, including Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay, argued that the country needed a strong national government to survive. They believed that only a unified federal system could maintain order, defend the nation, and promote economic growth. To persuade the public, they wrote a series of essays known as the Federalist Papers, explaining how the Constitution would protect liberty through a careful system of checks and balances. They believed the federal government should have enough authority to act for the common good, while still respecting the powers of the states. On the other side, anti-federalists like Patrick Henry and George Mason worried that a strong central government could easily become tyrannical, just like the monarchy they had fought to escape. They preferred more power to remain with the states and local communities, where government was closer to the people. Their pressure led to the addition of the Bill of Rights, which guaranteed key individual freedoms and limited federal power. So even though the Federalists won by getting the Constitution ratified, the Anti-Federalists had a lasting impact. Their ideas ensured that liberty and local control would remain central to American politics. The U.S. Constitution creates a division of powers between the national and state governments. Federal powers, sometimes called enumerated powers, include things like printing money, regulating trade between states and with other countries, maintaining the military, managing foreign relations, and running the postal service. State powers, known as reserved powers, include managing education, holding elections, regulating marriage and family law, overseeing public safety and police, and managing local transportation and infrastructure. Some powers are shared, such as the ability to collect taxes, build roads, and establish courts. This balance can be complicated and often leads to disagreements over who has the final say. Over the centuries, the balance between federal and state power has shifted many times. In the early years, the states held most of the power, but during moments of national crisis, like the Civil War, the Great Depression, and the Civil Rights Movement, the federal government expanded its role. For example, during the 1960s, federal laws like the Civil Rights Act forced states to end racial segregation. That was a case where national power was used to protect individual rights that were being infringed upon by some states. But at other times, the trend has moved in the opposite direction, toward what's called new federalism, giving more control back to the states, especially in areas like education and welfare. Today, the U.S. federal system relies on a mix of cooperation and competition. Federal and state governments often work together, for example, in funding highways, disaster response, or healthcare programs like Medicaid. But they also disagree, sometimes fiercely, on issues like environmental regulations, gun control, immigration enforcement, marijuana legalization, public health measures. In fact, many modern political debates, even ones that seem social or cultural, are really about who should decide: the federal government based in Washington, D.C., or the individual states. Federalism shapes nearly every part of American life, from what taxes you pay, to what schools teach, to what laws apply in your state. It's also why the U.S. can be so diverse in its laws and policies. Some states have the death penalty, others don't. Some have legalized recreational marijuana, others have banned it. This flexibility allows states to act as laboratories of democracy, experimenting with new ideas that, if successful, can be adopted nationally. But it also raises questions about equality and fairness when people's rights can vary depending on where they live. The tension between federal and state power isn't going away. It's built into the system, and it's part of what makes American democracy dynamic and sometimes messy. In our next episode, we'll take a closer look at state and local governments, how they're structured, what they do, and how their leaders interact with Washington. For now, remember this: the Federalist system isn't a flaw. It's a feature designed to balance unity with independence, and to make sure that no single level of government or person can hold all the power. Thanks for listening to U.S. Government Explained. I hope today's episode helped you understand a bit more about how America's unique system of shared power works. If you're enjoying this series, please follow or subscribe so you don't miss new episodes each week. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and keep sharing English.